Target for pirates and privateers, which we'll talk about later. But yes, but even so, in the Americas with the Spanish, because the Spanish have been given the entire New World, except for what you would know as Brazil, which belongs to the Portuguese. The Portuguese have been given Africa and Asia, and this was by order of the Pope, an agreement called the Treaty of Tordesillas. And in all of these places, the Spanish and the Portuguese are still relatively near the coast in most areas. Right now, as we talk, Pizarro is conquering the Incas in the south of the Americas. The Aztec Empire fell about 10 years ago and has become what will eventually become Mexico. In fact, the first Archbishop of Mexico sits on his throne in this day and age. But in most areas, it's coastwise. In Africa, with the Portuguese, they're only along the coast. They've not explored the interior very far. And it is much the same with Asia as well.
So were you to look at a map now, you would see a fairly recognizable layout of continents with probable exception of Australia not being there. But a lot of the East Indies, the islands in the Pacific, have been mapped and have been noted. But any of the interior areas of Southeast Asia, certainly of Africa, except for the northern coast and a few little bay inlets, and most of South America would be just question mark. It would be blank.
You see,
or they would make something up.
Aye, and this is where you see a lot of the fanciful creatures drawn en masse. But
very much so. For instance, you would see if they know that there are rivers that empty into the sea, so they will draw these rivers. But where these rivers go after 50 miles, they don't know. They just draw them up into the continent. Right. They must come from a mountain somewhere, so they'll draw the mountains.
And the darkest Africa is called that because there's nothing there that we know. It's darkness there. And of course, South America. Tales are coming out of South America that will turn a man's hair grey. Just hearing them. Fish that are carnivorous. And will strip you bare in seconds.
Wild ape men that live in the trees.
Right.
They have the dragon. They have a dragon in South America that is similar to one that is also found in Africa. Several of them actually, but some of them are long and sinuous. They have long, powerful necks and sharp, pointy teeth, and they are sometimes they have wings. Sometimes they have small limbs, and that is what we know of them.
And our classification for dragons, if it looks like a very large snake, it would be called a worm or a worm. And often those that crawl with 4 legs on the ground as well.
Large lizards,
that sort of thing.
It's going to be dragons.
The flying lot are quite different. And
but interestingly enough, one of the things that we conflate with dragons with small wings or with legs are in fact serpents. Great worms. We often see them because when they're in the process of taking something down and boiling and turning, we think we see things that aren't necessarily there.
If they've captured a bird, if they have snuck on a bird and captured it, there may be some wings flapping around there.
And in the stories, wyverns usually have a pair of wings but no legs. There are others that have a pair of wings and one pair of legs and one pair of wings. Others that have 4 pairs of legs or 4 legs and 2 wings.
And we often run into the concept of chicken or egg. There may be a legend of something, a basilisk, or a worm, a great worm of some sort. And it's just legend up until somebody actually brings one home. And you have these massive anacondas being brought back, stuffed. And there's your great worm. It may be a young'un, but it's still massive.
It has always been the nature of humankind to use evidence to justify what we already believe.
Right.
And the worst part is they don't actually look very much like they did in life because we can salt them and then we can fill them with straw.
And so it distorts them.
Yes.
Or just bring home the skin.
Aye, that as well. Sometimes just the skin is brought. But there was an English expedition a few years ago to what you would know as Brazil, and they brought back all manner of strange things, including a native of the New World who was brought to England. And sadly, he did sicken and die on the voyage back.
Which caused no end of trouble because he was actually noble.
He was actually a chief.
And he was a chief, and there was a hostage. There was a Spaniard held hostage for him. But it was actually worked out, they were actually able to persuade them, no, he really did die of disease.
The native people there believed them because they were persuasive,
Right.
and because I suppose they were a good judge of character, because he had died of illness, unfortunately, and they let their hostage go. But interactions with natives of the New World have been very tenuous at best for most. The Spanish are there to conquer and convert them, and they have opposed them, as I would as well, as my own people have opposed oppression in the past. And others go there with different purposes, but there are not very many who are there to get to know them or to work with them.
And oh, the things that have been lost.
There is one friar, Bartolome de las Casas, who is an advocate for that people in the New World and seeks for them not to be enslaved and tortured, to be treated well as people, as human beings, for that is what they are.
His writings will be invaluable in your time.
Because unlike a lot of the other people who go there to write only about riches and locations of hidden cities, he writes about the people. So that is one of the very, very few records we have from a contemporary source of the society and the civilization of the time before it was utterly wiped out and eradicated.
And my lords and ladies, you all have seen, I'm certain, many of you are familiar with the great calendar that came from the Aztecs since they've been conquered. It is the stone calendar is very crude, and it is actually lacking some in detail. It was a placeholder. It was a placeholder for a gold one that was larger and more intricate, and was melted down.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yes. Its weight in gold.
Right. And the priceless artifacts, beautifully crafted. Jewels were pried out, gold melted down, and
Books
turned into
burned.
ingots.
Books burned.
Right.
Because they were not.
It was quite an advanced culture in its own right, and from what it gleaned from the Maya as well. And they had quite a bit of knowledge of all sorts of things, and unfortunately a lot of it is lost in our day and age because people are idiots, basically.
But it is still a frightening, wondrous place. The New World actually is terrifying to most of us. Even the Spaniards themselves who know it are terrified of it.
They stay near the coast, almost always. So they have sent some explorers further inland, such as De Soto, Ponce de Leon, Coronado, and various others, who've gone in and have had all sorts of adventures, but many of them do not return.
Africa has been, being relatively close to Europe, has been known about and talked about and explored in small pieces for several millennia, off and on. But really it's only, again, within the last 50 years that we circumnavigated it, and also we've started to go down rivers. Not very far, but at least starting to penetrate in